Welcome back to another crochet tutorial with Cozy Rosie UK, and today I am showing you how to crochet your very own pair of Bella shorts. Now these shorts are worked up in 3 parts with your waistband, your body and your legs. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and of course the notification bell so that you never miss out another one of my crochet tutorials or patterns again. Let's find out the materials we need to make this beautiful pattern. So for the Bella shorts, you can use any size 3 or DK weight cotton or cotton blend. Now I'm actually combining 2 different types of cotton today. I am using Paintbox Yarns Cotton DK in the shade 401, which is paper white, and this is 100% cotton. It's marked as a size 3, so it's definitely going to work for this pattern, and you've made a whole pair before, so I know it does work. And I'm going to make the waistband in this white colour, and then for the body of the shorts, I'm actually using a cotton blend with 60% bamboo and 40% cotton. This is Stylecraft Naturals and I absolutely love this. It's incredibly soft, and I think for a pattern that's going to be worn so closely to the skin, it would be great to work a whole pair of shorts in this. But actually the waistband is quite loose fitting, so it doesn't need to be quite as soft as the shorts itself. Now this shade is shade Aqua, which is shade number 7141. I really love how this colour turns out, and as you can see it has a very gentle sheen to it. So when you compare it to the Paintbox 100% cotton, it's not too dissimilar and actually works really well together. I have already done a test swatch in both these colours, hence why they're both open, so I can check that they wash well together, because that's the most important thing when you're using different fibres. For the hook, I'm going to be using a 4mm crochet hook. This is a tulip hook, which I'm just kind of getting used to now. They have almost a thumb stop or a finger stop, depending on how you hold your hook. You will find that I'll end up putting my thumb on top of it because that's just the way I am. You're also going to need 5 stitch markers. Now that seems quite excessive, but it's just going to help prevent you having to count too much when you're working the body of the shorts. Of course, a pair of scissors and a darning needle. So as I mentioned earlier, this pattern is worked in 3 different parts. So for this section, we're going to be doing the waistband, and I'm going to be working up my waistband using the Paintbox Cotton DK. So gather all of those materials and let's get started on our waistbands. As you can see on the screen, this pattern is written for 9 different sizes from XS all the way up to 5XL. If you need to double check any stitch counts or the measurements for these different sizes, you can go and view the written pattern over on the website at any time. It's linked below for you in the description box, and I'll pop a little link in the top right hand corner for you here so you can go and check those out too. I'm going to be making a size medium today, but I will also give you the row count and stitch counts for all the sizes as we go through. So to start this pattern, we're going to start by working our waistband, which is in turned rows. So we're going to start by making a slip knot, and then placing that onto our hook. And then this is for all sizes. We begin by making a chain of 13. So we yarn over and bring the hook through the loop on our hook, and that creates our chain. And we're going to make 13 of those. So that was number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 13. Once we have our chain of 13, we're going to work 1 US half double crochet, which is the same as a UK half treble crochet, into the second chain from hook. So you can see your first chain is directly underneath your hook. This loop doesn't count, so we're going to insert our hook underneath the top loop of our second chain. Before we do that, we're going to yarn over and insert that hook under that top loop, yarn over, bring a loop up. We then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on our hook for our US half double crochet. We're going to work 1 US half double crochet into each chain across. So we yarn over the hook and insert our hook into the next chain, not into the big hole, into that next chain, yarn over, bring our loop up, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And we repeat this all the way down. So we're yarning over and inserting our hook into the next chain before yarning over and pull through all 3 loops. Repeat that all the way down back to where your slip knot is, and I'll meet you in at the moment at the end of row 1. So at the end of row 1, you should have a stitch count of 12 US half double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. So for row 2, we're going to make a turning chain of 1 and turn our work, ready to work our second row. So remembering that this chain 1 does not count as our stitch, we're going to start by yarning over the hook. Now instead of working a half double crochet back into the whole stitch, for this row we're going to work into the back loop of our stitch only. So as you can see, there are 2 parts to our stitch, and it's this back loop that we want to pick up. So the easiest way to do that is just aim your hook for the middle of the stitch, not underneath through the normal spot, but actually through that back loop to pick that up. We're then going to yarn over, bring our hook back through, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And we're going to repeat this all the way down. So here is our next stitch, and we're just aiming for the middle of that stitch, picking up the back loop only. Yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And we're just going to repeat this all the way down for row 2, and I'll meet you at the end to talk about how many rows you need to do depending on which size you're working. So at the end of row 2, you should still have a stitch count of 12 half double crochets. Just this time we've worked them into the back loop only, and it leaves us this lovely ridge of these front loops which are unworked, and this is going to create a beautiful ribbing for our waistband. Each side is going to repeat row 2 for a total amount. So for instance, extra small is going to repeat row 2 for a total of 74 rows. Size small is going for 84 rows in total. Medium, I'm doing 90 rows altogether. Large is for 102 rows. Extra large is 104 rows. 2XL would be 126 rows. 3XL would be 134 rows. 4XL is 144 and 5XL is 156. So we're going to continue to repeat row 2 all the way up. So do your turning chain of 1 and then work 1 US half double crochet into each stitch across, ensuring that you maintain your stitch count of 12 in each row. So continue to repeat row 2 and I'll meet you back ready to join your waistband. Once you've completed all the rows you need to complete your waistband, we're going to join the 2 ends of the waistband together to create our completed waistband. So to do that, we're going to start by making a turning chain of 1, and then we need to make sure that our waistband is completely flat and bring the wrong side of our chain up to join. We need to double check that you've definitely not got a twist in your waistband, because what we're going to do is work through both sides of our waistband. So once you've done your turning chain of 1, you're going to insert your hook under that first stitch of the next row and also through the first stitch of the wrong side of your chain. So you're just going to place both onto your hook, and then you can yarn over, and we're going to slip stitch to join them. So we bring the hook through and straight through that loop on your hook. We're going to repeat this all the way down by inserting our hook through both layers of our waistband and slip stitching to join. We don't want to slip stitch too tightly because we don't want to warp the size of this seam. You just need to make sure that you're not working back through a stitch that you've already joined. So you can see where that comes out. So we're just going through each stitch and the corresponding reverse of or other side of the chain. So join all of those, making sure you shouldn't end up with any stitches left over. You should just start and finish with the same count, and I'll meet you in a moment. So once you've slip stitched all the way through each of your stitches, if you are not changing colour for your shorts and you're continuing to work the rest of your shorts in the same colour, you don't need to fasten off. If, like me, you are using another colour, you can fasten off just by making a chain of 1 and then grabbing your scissors, making sure you've left enough to weave in, and then you can just bring that through, and that completes your waistband. Now we're going to, regardless of whether you're working in the same colour or you're going to be changing colour, just turn your waistband the other way out so that your seam is on the inside, and that's going to be the back of our shorts. So the seam is on the inside, not the outside of your waistband. So once we've completed our Bella Shorts waistbands, we are going to continue on to our body of our shorts. This section of the pattern is worked in continuous rounds, which is why I'm going to recommend that you have a stitch marker to mark your first stitch of each round, so you don't have to keep track of where you started. And you're also going to need some extra stitch markers to mark certain points of your first round once you've finished it. You can either use a stitch marker or some scrap yarn, whatever works for you. We're continuing with a 4mm crochet hook. If you still have your main colour attached, you're ready to keep going. If, like me, you're changing colour, we're going to insert our hook into the stitch next to our seam. And then I'm just going to pop my yarn over my hook with the tail at the back and pull through. So we're all ready to start working on the body of our shorts. Apart from I've lost my tail, there we go. So from here we're going to start by making a chain of 1, and for us that's just to secure our colour change, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. We're going to be working into each of the row ends around. So as you can see, I've joined into an end of a row. If I move that tail out of the way. Now working into the row ends can seem a little bit confusing because, as you can see, there are lots of different holes here. And what we're looking to do is to work into the end of the rows and not in between them. This will ensure that you achieve the right stitch count as we go around. We're going to be working 2 US half double crochets into each end of the row around. So for me, where I've joined is my first. So I'm going to start by yarning over, inserting my hook. I'm working over that end as well. Yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Then we yarn over again, reinsert our hook, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And that works 2 stitches into that end of the row. Now this hole here is not where I'm going to work my next stitch. I'm going to look for the line of where my ribbing is and go into the top of this stitch here. So I'm going to yarn over the hook and insert my hook into the top of that row, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, yarn over again and reinsert into that same spot, working a second half double crochet. Once again, I'm going to look for the solid part of my row after this row we've just worked, and you can see there's a nice big hole for me to work into. So I'm yarning over, inserting my hook, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through all 3, yarn over, insert the hook, bring your loop up and pull through all 3 loops. So each time we're working 2 half double crochets into the ends of these rows. Now because I'm looking for this ridge, it's easier for me to find next where I'm working. It isn't this hole here, it's not that hole, it's just right in that top of that stitch. So yarn over, I'm going to push my hook through, ready to work that half double crochet. Oops. And of course the second one. So whichever side you're working, you're going to be placing 2 half double crochets into the end of each row around, and this will give you the following stitch counts. Now these stitch counts are given in size order, so it go from extra small, small, medium, large, etc. So for an extra small it's 148, then 168, 180, which is for the medium, 204 for the large, 216 for the XL, 252 for the 2XL, 658 for the 3XL, 288 for the 4XL, and 312 for the 5XL. So continue to repeat, working 2 half double crochets into the top of each row end around, and I will meet you back at the end of round 1, where we're going to mark our stitches ready to place our lace sections. So at the end of round 1, it's worth double checking that you've done the right number of stitches again before we move on to put our stitch markers in, because there's a lot of counting. So at the end of round 1, extra small should have a stitch count of 148, small will be 168, medium 180, which is what I've got, I've double checked. Large will be 204, extra large will be 216, 2XL will be 252, 3XL will be 268, 4XL will be 288, and 5XL will be 312. Before we go into round 2, and remembering we're not joining our rounds, I'm just going to bring up a big loop and take my hook out, because now we need to mark some stitches. So I'm going to pop these on the screen for you because they're different for each size, and it's really important that we put these stitch markers in the right place. So the way that we're counting where to place our stitch markers is we're going in the direction that we worked round 1. So for instance, the last stitch will be your last stitch, so we're counting from our first stitch of the round around and then placing our stitch markers as directed. So for my medium size, I'm placing a stitch marker in stitch 40, 50, 130 and 140. So mark those stitches, press pause and triple check where you've placed them, because we need to make sure that these are in the right place before we proceed on to round 2. So I have triple checked that I've placed my stitch markers in the right place. So once you've placed your stitch markers, you should be able to lay your waistband flat and your markers should be pretty much opposite each other, give or take for a bit of stretch, because these are where our lace flame stitches are going to be placed. So once you're happy with your stitch marker placement, we can proceed on to round 2. Now I've got my 5th stitch marker here. I'm using a different colour because I'm marking my first stitch, because I'm going to mark my first stitch of each round. Going into round 2, we don't join or slip stitch to join. We simply continue working into the first stitch of the round, which is, I've just made a little bit smaller by pulling in my loose thread there. So this is actually my first stitch. It's kind of turned towards me, which is not always ideal. And we're going to be working 1 half double crochet into each stitch to our first marked stitch. So I'm yarning over my hook, ready to insert my hook under that first stitch. Yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over and pull through 3. So that marks our first stitch of the round. So I'm just going to work my next one before I place my marker. Don't know why, it's just what I've always done. There we go. And then I'm going to make sure that I've marked my first stitch of the round, because when we come back, we don't have to count, we just work towards it. So as I said, we're going to work 1 US half double crochet into each stitch around to the first marked stitch. So continue to work your half double crochets into each stitch around, and I'll meet you by our first marker. So once we've reached our first stitch marker, I'm just going to remove that, and we're going to work 1 US single crochet, which is the same as a UK double crochet, into that marked stitch. So we just insert, bring a loop up and pull through 2, and then we're going to replace our stitch marker. There we go. And then we're ready to start our flame, or to set up, ready to work our flame. So we chain 3, 1, 2 and 3. Move that out of the way. And then we skip the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2 and 3. You can see that's where my chains come out of. So 1, 2, 3. And in that next stitch, we're going to work a single crochet. And that creates a lovely chain 3 space with 3 skip stitches underneath. We then make another chain of 3, 1, 2 and 3. This time we're only going to skip 1 chain, and we work 1 single crochet into the next, which gives us a chain 3 space with just 1 stitch in between. We make another chain of 3, 1, 2 and 3. Skip the next 3 stitches and you should be to your next marked stitch. So I'm just going to remove my stitch marker, 1, 2, 3, and work 1 single crochet into the next marked stitch. I'm going to pop my stitch marker back in just so I can double check my stitch counts if I need to at any point. And then from here we're repeating what we've just done. So we're going to work 1 US half double crochet into each stitch around over to our next marked stitch, which is all the way over here. So work 1 US double crochet into each stitch to your next marked stitch, and I'll meet you there ready to set up the next flame stitch. So I've made my way around to the next marked stitch, and I'm just removing my stitch marker, ready to repeat that single crochet in our marked stitch. So I'm going to work 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then we're going to make our chain of 3, 1, 2 and 3. We then skip the next 3 stitches, working 1 single crochet into the next. We chain 3 again, 1, 2 and 3. This time we're only skipping 1 stitch and working a single crochet into the next. And then we should have 3 stitches to our next marked stitch. So we make another chain of 3, 1, 2 and 3. Skip the next 3 stitches and you should be to your next marked stitch. So I'm just going to remove my stitch marker, 1, 2, 3, and work 1 single crochet into the next marked stitch. I'm going to pop my stitch marker back in just so I can double check my stitch counts if I need to at any point. We're then going to work 1 US half double crochet into each stitch back to where we started our round, which is only a little bit further. So we're going to go all the way back to the end of this round, which is where our first marked stitch is. Just noticed I picked up the 3rd loop there. We're not doing that. So work 1 US half double crochet to the end of your round, and I'll meet you back there ready for round 3. I've just worked my final stitch in round 2 and I'm back to my first stitch of round 2. I can tell because I've got a different colour stitch marker. You don't have to be as fancy as me. And we should now have we should each have these kind of sections of chain 3 spaces. You should have 2 chain 3 spaces with 3 stitches underneath, and then 1 chain 3 space with just 1 in between. You should have 1 at each side of your shorts. You should have 1 each side, and they should pretty much be matched as even with your seam in the middle. So the seam is the middle point, but what's going to happen, because we're working a continuous round, the beginning of your round will start to move closer towards where these are. So we're going to keep marking our first stitch so we know what we're starting from, because we do need to know that accurately when it comes to working our legs. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to go into round 3, and this is where we're going to start our pattern repeat. So round 3 is the first round of our pattern repeat. So again, we're not slip stitching to join at the end of this round. We're going to work straight into that first stitch where our stitch marker was, and we're going to start by making 1 US double crochet, which is the same as a UK treble crochet, into each stitch around to our marked stitch. So for US double crochet, we start by yarning over, insert our hook into that next stitch, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, we'll pull through 2 and then pull through 2 again. We're going to do that into each stitch around. So we yarn over, insert, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through those first 2 loops, yarn over again to pull through the last 2. Just going to pop my stitch marker back into my first stitch of the round, and then I am ready to proceed. So continue to work 1 US double crochet into each stitch around to your first stitch marker, and I will meet you just before our stitch marker. So I'm just working my final stitch before my stitch marker. I'm just going to take out this stitch marker because we're going to work into this stitch. So we're going to work 1 double crochet into that marked stitch just as we've been working around. And I'm going to pop my stitch marker back in. Don't want to get confused with which one's which. We then skip the first chain 3 space, and we're going to be working into this smaller, the chain 3 space with just 1 stitch underneath. We start by making a chain of 1, and then we're going to work our double crochet cluster stitch into this chain 3 space. So we begin by yarning over our hook, skipping that next chain 3 space, and inserting our hook into the next. We yarn over, insert our hook to bring up a loop. We yarn over and pull through 2 loops. We then yarn over our hook again, and we're reinserting our hook into that same chain 3 space with just 1 skip stitch underneath. We insert the hook, yarn over, bring a loop up. We yarn over, pull through those first 2 loops, then yarn over to pull through the remaining 3 loops on our hook. We then chain 3, because we're going to make a total of 5 of these cluster stitches into this same chain 3 space. So let's make another one together. Once you've made your chain 3, you yarn over the hook, reinsert the hook into the same chain 3 space, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over and pull through those first 2 loops. We then yarn over, reinsert our hook into the same chain 3 space, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over and pull through the remaining 3 loops, followed by a chain of 3. 1, 2 and 3. See that stitch marker trying to come out. And we're going to repeat that again till we have 5 of these. So we yarn over, insert, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, reinsert, bring our loop up, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over and pull through the remaining 3 loops. Chain 3. So this is number 4. So we yarn over, insert, yarn over, bring our loop up, yarn over to pull through the first 2, yarn over again, reinsert, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through 2, and then finally yarn over and pull through 3. We chain 3 before our 5th and final cluster. If you need to, you can just bring your clusters to one side so you still have space to work in there. And we're working one final cluster into that same chain 3 space again in the exact same way. And instead of doing a chain 3, this time we're just going to do a chain of 1 at the end. We're then going to remove that next stitch marker, ready to work 1 US double crochet into the first stitch after the chain 3. So we skip the chain 3 and work a US double crochet into that next stitch. And this creates our flame stitch, which I hope you agree is incredibly pretty. So you should have 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 double crochet clusters, and you should have 4 of these chain 3 spaces and a chain 1 across the space here, so it keeps the stitch looking nice and neat. From here we're going to repeat this all again. So we're going to work 1 US double crochet into each stitch around to our next mark stitch, and this is where I'm going to meet you. So continue to work 1 US double crochet into each stitch around to that next mark stitch, and I will meet you there. So I've reached my next mark stitch and I've removed my stitch marker. So I'm just working 1 US double crochet into that marked stitch before the chain 3 space, and then we're ready to repeat what we did for the other flame. So we start by making a chain of 1, we skip the first chain 3 space, then into the next chain 3 space we're going to be working 5 double crochet clusters with those chain 3s in between. So we start by yarning over the hook, insert your hook, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, reinsert the hook into the same chain 3 space to bring up a 4th loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over and pull through the last 3 loops. We then make our chain of 3. So from here we yarn over the hook, reinsert our hook and work our next double crochet cluster, and we chain 3 again, and we're going to make sure we've got a total of 5 double crochet clusters, and remembering after that last double crochet cluster we don't work a chain of 3. So 1, 2, 3. So we've got 3 now. This is number 4. And then we just need to work our 5th and final double crochet cluster into the same chain 3 space to finish off our flame. We're then going to make a chain of 1 before working 1 US double crochet into that next marked stitch. Just going to pop that marker in there so I know where that marked stitch should be. So it's the first stitch after our chain 3 space. We just work a double crochet. And we're going to work 1 double crochet into each stitch across back to the end of round 3. And I'll meet you there to go into round 4, the second part of our repeat. Going into round 4, we're going to start by removing our first stitch marker and working our first double crochet into the first stitch of the round. I'm also working the second one just before I replace my stitch marker into the first stitch that we made. And round 4, we're setting up those chain 3 spaces again. So we're going to start by working 1 double crochet into each stitch across to our first marked stitch. So work around to your first marked stitch and I will meet you there. I've made my way to my marked stitch, just going to remove my stitch marker, and we're going to work a double crochet into the top of that marked stitch. We're then going to make a chain of 3. So 1, 2 and 3. I'm going to pop my stitch marker back into the top of that double crochet just before I forget, and I look down and see a stitch marker on the table. So the way that this is written can be a little bit confusing because you just need to make sure you're skipping the right bits. Visually, I find this quite easy. Effectively, what we're going to be doing is working a single crochet into each of these chain 2 spaces. If you've read the pattern and you're thinking, what on earth is she talking about? Because it's written as skip the first chain 3 space, because this is the first chain 3 space. It doesn't say to skip the chain 1. So we're skipping this chain 1 space, we're skipping the first chain 3 space, and then into this next chain space, we're working a single crochet. We then chain 3. And then we're working 1 single crochet into the next chain 3 space. So we've worked a single crochet either side of the middle cluster, and we then chain 3 before we're going to continue with our double crochets into each stitch around to the next marker. So we're going to place a double crochet into that next marked stitch, and then we're going to work 1 double crochet into each stitch around to the next marked stitch. So keep working around and I'll meet you around for the next marked stitch, and we'll repeat this again so that we can set up our finish setting up our repeating rounds. So I've reached my next marked stitch. Just going to pop that stitch marker out. We're going to work a double crochet into the top of the marked stitch. We then chain 3. And we're going to skip the chain 1, skip the first chain 3, and in the next chain 3 we're going to work a single crochet. We chain 3, single crochet into the next chain 3 space. We then chain 3, skipping the next chain 3 and the chain 1, ready to work a double crochet into the top of the next stitch. And we're working 1 double crochet into each stitch around back to our first, to where our round began. So continue to work to the end of round 4. I'll then be telling you how many rows you need to do to complete the body section of your shorts, ready to move on to your legs. So I've just finished my last stitch of round 4. And you can see already that our stitches are starting to move away from our seam. So for round 5 onwards, we're all going to be repeating rounds 3 and 4 to create more and more flames. For extra small and small, they're doing rounds 5 to 22, mediums doing round 5 to 24, large to extra large doing rounds 5 to 26, 2XL and 3XL are doing 5 to 24, 4XL and 5XL are doing rounds 5 to 30. So for each repeat of 3 and 4, you're going to be, so for example now for round 5, we're repeating round 3. They're time stamped for you below. If you're watching on your desktop, you should be able to see the chapters on the right hand side, and you can just skip through the chapters to find the bit that you need to work. Round 3 is the next round to work, followed by round 4 again. And we're just going to repeat them until you've completed the number of rounds you need, and then we're going to meet back to work our leg. So you're going to see your shorts growing quite quickly, and at this point when we're ready to continue on to the legs, if you want to make sure that you're going to have a good comfy fit, the bottom of the shorts, is that the right phrase, should reach the bottom of the bottom effectively. So because that's where we're going to be splitting to create our legs. So keep repeating those 3 and 4, and I will see you in a little while to continue on to creating our legs.